David Grasso from GenFKD, joined by John Burnett, Black Enterprise contributor, and Carrie Sheffield, the founder of Bold, as well as my colleague Justin Dent, the co-founder of GenFKD. Welcome, folks, and welcome to Bold Business.
Here.
Good morning.
Yes.
Thanks for filling in, John.
Good to be here.
Thanks. Are you ready to be the sacrificial lamb?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's get going on our action-packed hour ahead. So first off, our two first headlines are about money and romance. On the last show, Carrie mentioned a dating website that matches you with prospective lovers based on your credit score, oh my, which is called creditscoredating.com. Well, as it turns out, this idea isn't so outlandish, as more than 40% of Americans say that knowing someone's credit score would affect their, quote, willingness to date that person. This is according to a recent Bankrate survey of 1,000 adults. So what are your thoughts on this, friends?
Well, I think it's important to disaggregate genders because women care a lot more about men's credit scores than vice versa.
Not surprisingly.
Or as a friend of mine likes to say, men are always tall when they're standing on top of their money.
Oh, my
Coming in
goodness.
hot.
We're not even 5 minutes
Oh,
in.
my
Jeez.
Not my line.
Carrie.
That was not my line. It's just
Yeah,
the
it just
facts.
came from a friend somewhere, right? Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's move on after that one. We're not going to come up with anything better than that. Next, a new survey about secrets conducted by Columbia Business School revealed that Americans would rather talk about sex and infidelity than their finances to their partner. An article from MarketWatch points out that finances were the third most commonly kept secret among survey respondents. Additionally, about a quarter of millennials surveyed said they had lied to their partner about finances. So, why are we so uncomfortable talking about money?
Because most of our financial situations suck. I mean, our sex lives tend to be better than our bank accounts, right? You probably have slept with more
At least
people than
we
you
hope
have in your
so,
savings
right?
if you're
Yeah.
a millennial. Yeah, well, I don't know.
So men like to ask for the number, but not the credit score.
But not the credit score, right? They want to know how many people you slept with, but not what's in your bank account.
This is
right?
so confusing.
Well, I think Nicole Lapin, who we've had on Bold before, she's the author of a couple great books, including most recently Boss Bitch. She always talks about how the fact that even among her female friends, they won't talk about their salaries. They'll talk about like getting bikini waxes down there and like the most intimate details with their girlfriends, but they won't talk about their salary history. And I think we're just sort of conditioned that way, that it's got to be very hush hush. And I think that we need to have more transparency about it. Like we need to be more open about our finances if we're going to have any like improvement.
What do you mean by open?
Like just being able to talk about, so like we have a consumer credit crisis in this country. We've got massive, student loan debt, auto debt, mortgages underwater.
Credit card debt, yeah.
And yet everyone has this mirage on Instagram or wherever, like that, that things are so much better than they are. Like, let's just get real. And I think that this is part of our culture, unfortunately. We've created this sort of mirage. It's like the emperor with the new clothes.
So do you think that it also involves some level of social competition?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, it's not like, especially for the men. I mean, I'm sorry, like, again.
Okay, one situation where men don't have it as good. Okay, one. Okay.
But it's a big one. Yeah, because I think men have a lot of pressure to be perceived as financially successful.
You don't say.
I mean, and women too, but I think men in particular. So it's just sort of like, yeah, you got to inflate and pretend that you're something that you're not. I mean, that was the whole Bernie Madoff cloak and dagger stuff that, he just had this big, fake, persona that he created. And we just we got to get the facts.
The truth.
So anyway, funny enough, our next headline is probably my favorite. So a few weeks ago, the company Juicero became the laughingstock of the internet when a couple of Bloomberg reporters figured out that manually squeezing the company's juice packets was just as effective and even slightly faster than using the brand's fancy $400 juice machine. Juicero, a company that received a whopping $120 million in startup funding, has now become a lightning rod for everything that's wrong with the private sector in America. An article that appeared in The Guardian titled, "America has become so anti-innovation, it's economic suicide," claims that entrepreneurs, as seen through this useless juicing contraption, are actually terrible innovators. The author says that most innovation comes from government spending, and that we're actually squeezing the private sector through cuts to government research. This piece boldly claims that most breakthroughs come from the public sector, not private private business. Man, I can barely get through that without laughing. So is government really responsible for pushing that innovation?
It's responsible for some. I mean, like the internet, for example, was public-private partnership, the space race, and all the advances we had in satellite technology. A lot of that's from government. So there's definitely, and also in health and disease research.
Carrie defending the government?
No, I'm saying.
Guys, you heard it here first.
No, I'm saying.
That's another show.
Yeah,
So far you've
That's
said
MSNBC.
bitch and you've defended the government. Like, I don't know who you are today.
I think there's a time and place when it's done in a smart way. There's also examples of crony governmentism, like Cylinder, for example, and just big flops when it comes to government investment. The war on poverty was a big failure, but I think there's a time and place. But I think the bigger innovations are coming from the private sector. I think you agree, right, John?
Absolutely. I think the only thing that the government, well, I should say the leading thing that the government is proficient in when it comes to juicing is getting the consumer taxes, because they juice the people out of taxes all the time.
So
Now, in
where's
terms
this
of
going?
you
Squeeze the back.
yeah, they do it manually, automation, like everything. But what are your thoughts concerning that?
I think Carrie's right. The government certainly has a place, especially when it comes to larger scientific investments. So healthcare being one of them, space and satellites being one of them. It's not juice, right? The government shouldn't be researching how to make a better juce. And I'm
You
sure
would like that though, Justin.
I would
You're
love
a big
that.
juicer.
I mean, I'm a Juice Press fan. I will hawk them ad nauseum, right? I'll probably go get a kale juice after this, but I'm not squeezing it out of my hands. But the article is certainly false, right, and wrong in the sense that entrepreneurs are not innovative. Entrepreneurs are innovative in the ways that they take with the research that the government does and bring it to market, right? The government wouldn't be able to do that. They wouldn't know where to start.
Like you said off air, it's not a zero-sum game, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think what this whole episode illustrates is that people conflate the ability to raise money with the ability to create a successful product, and that happens a lot in Silicon Valley. I've had a lot of friends who've raised millions of dollars only to see their company go belly under. Instead of taking what they call the lean startup methodology, we should have the author of that book on sometime on Bold Business.
Okay, taking notes.
Yes.
Maybe they're watching. Come on.
Yeah, his name's Eric Ries, and it's like the Bible for startups, and it's
it
the
is.
lean startup methodology where you're building the company sustainably, and it's a real company, and it's not this fake juice nonsense.
Well, anyway, and speaking of squeezing consumers and slippery business practices, no one is more misleading about sticker prices than private colleges. Few people know that tuition discounting has now reached record highs, averaging almost half off the rack rate for the average student. So that means if you got into a private college and are only paying about half of the supposed tuition, you're actually getting the average discount. Unfortunately for private colleges, their discounting practices don't appear to be working. Overall, college enrollment is declining as more people begin to doubt the value of a college degree. Justin, what do you think about that?
I think it's great. I mean, more people should be doubting the value of a college degree, right? And so, it's obviously horrible that we have colleges and universities that are charging students, essentially selling them a false bill of goods, right? And constantly increasing the price of tuition. And this is just representative of everything that's going wrong in the market for higher education. In part because there's been no competition, there's been no challenge to these insanely arcane institutions, and we, unfortunately, as a country, have this compact. This idea that in order to be economically successful, you have to go to college. That's no longer the case, right? You have an insane and wonderful number of new companies coming up with credentialing. And, I think as a country, we need to start having a conversation on you don't need that piece of paper that costs you $30,000 a year or more in order to have a guarantee of economic success.
Wow.
Plus one.
I mean, I don't think about this every day or anything. I don't see it.
Preach, Justin, preach.
David's like, I hear this all day, every day from Justin. So
This is what we do at GenFKD. Okay.
So to be
Hence
fair,
why I called on Justin.
I-
John and Carrie, do you have anything to add to that?
I totally agree with everything that Justin just said, and I say this as someone who has a master's degree, so it's not like I
Right.
don't think that there is some value. I just think that it should be perceived as an investment rather than a consumption. I think a lot of people just go because they're on autopilot, and they're like, this is what society's telling me to do, and then unfortunately a lot of them get to campus and they're not taught to think critically, and that's what you see when I never thought in America we would see a place where students would literally beat up a professor for challenging their assumptions about something. That to me is like the end of free speech in this country, and that's terrible. So I think that, you know, just for the ability to think critically, you don't have to go to a classroom to do that. You can do that from your own home. You can do that from the internet. And Peter Thiel, I think, is doing something really interesting with his scholarship, where he'll give the Thiel Fellows to have them drop out of college to do a startup.
That's kind of crazy, but okay.
I mean, it's Peter Thiel. What do you expect? I mean, are you surprised?
You have a lot of professors at these academic institutions that are churning out research papers, but they're not practitioners.
Right.
Students actually want to know what they need to learn to be successful, whether they're opening a business after college, or if they want to launch a career. But they're not getting that practical knowledge to be successful.
And, you know, nor do universities necessarily think that that's their job, right? I've certainly seen a fair number of educators who have said, it's not my job to guarantee you a job after college, right? And it's, you know, I was just with a group of education leaders and people from the corporate learning space, and IBM and Apple and Amazon. They all say the same thing that Carrie says, which is the most critical skill that people need in the 21st century is critical thinking. And that's what we're not seeing at the university level. So it's problematic in a lot of ways.
Totally.
So anyway, we have to skip the last headline because we're running out of time. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Of course. Great to be here.
So John, you ready for our long list of guests?
Absolutely. Let's get started. Let's keep it rolling.
So first up, we have Bowden from Choice Media. And, you know, Choice Media is all about trying to put a spotlight on K-12 education policy. So let's play a video that we've got there.
Hi, I'm Samantha Cole, and here's this week's Choice Media Education Report.
It's Bowden.
Education
Bowden? Secretary
Betsy DeVos got jeered and booed while giving the commencement address at the historically black Bethune-Cookman University on Wednesday.
As I said, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be with you today. While we will undoubtedly
The incident set off a series of reactions on TV and social media.
I do believe they got the message, and the message was clearly that we did not want her as the commencement speaker. We let them know that graduation was not the place for politics. We did this continuously. We did this in a respectful manner.
Let me understand this. Y'all on student loans, which means the government pays for your education. But the secretary of the government for education comes to your school, and you boo her. The person who is paying for you and allowing loans for you to go to school comes to your school, and you boo her.
That's not good politics. And
That's not good politics.
Later the same night, DeVos released the statement, quote, "I have respect for all those who attended, including those who demonstrated their disagreement with me." In traditional district news, should the best teachers get bonuses? A couple of districts across the country are dealing with this issue of merit pay. In Dallas, administrators presented a revised merit pay plan, and in Newark, New Jersey, 62% of teachers voted to approve an amended contract with merit pay bonuses.
Revolutionary.
Wow. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for inviting me.
Quite a video you brought there.
Well, I mean, I've been enjoying bold business since I was a kid. Ever since, you know, I was a young child, I've been growing up with bold business, so it's great to be here.
So you're 3 weeks old?
Precocious, indeed, yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you do. Obviously, you're not shying away from those hot button issues.
Oh, sure, yeah. So the world of education is one that is changing. In our view, it has the least media attention of anything in our culture relative to the importance in our society. So everyone goes to school. Schools are in every city, suburb, small town, rural area. Huge changes are underway with online learning exploding, the charter school movement, homeschooling growing by huge percentages. And huge fights underway with teacher strikes, with fights about the growth of school choice and all kinds of funding issues that continue to prevail. And things like you just heard over here, which is the idea of maybe paying the better teachers more, and maybe if you're a lousy teacher, you don't get quite as much. I mean, some of these things are considered revolutionary. They wouldn't be revolutionary in any other industry, by the way. It's almost a form of madness, I think, that we would, pay an awesome, hard-to-find AP science or math teacher exactly the same as a mediocre or worse, middle school gym teacher who phones it in.
It makes it challenging to actually recruit top talent.
Oh, that's exactly right. Exactly, and also retain the talent. Right. When people know that they're working really hard and they're a great teacher, and the teacher across the hall is awful, and maybe they have one extra year of seniority and they get paid more than you do, and you're awesome. It's not very good for morale.
Let's talk about school choice, because obviously that's implicit in your name, choice media or whatever. Let's talk about that. That charter schools are a mainstay where I'm from in Florida, where Bessie DeVos spoke, obviously. But, some people aren't familiar with school choice because charter schools don't have, are not very common in many parts of the country.
Sure. I mean, while it's true 44 states have charter school laws, in most places, for most people, they're not zoned in an area near a charter school, so it's not a part of most of their lives. So it's basically 5% right now of the enrollment population is in charter schools in America right now. So that's where
sounds very high to me. From when I was a little kid, it's a lot higher.
Oh, sure, it's doubled in the last 10 years or so.
Yes.
And so it is growing, but there continues to be pushback. Just last November, there was a statewide referendum in Massachusetts, for example, to cap this deal. We got to cap these charter schools. Don't let them grow. And
they're trying to do that in New York as well.
A lot of teachers' union money goes into that because they don't want the competition, and they also want to keep the union dues coming in from the teachers who are unionized in the traditional public schools. So they oppose this kind of thing.
Well, you mentioned competition. Can you expound on that? What have you seen with respect to traditional public and charter schools?
I mean, the way that a lot of school choice movement started is they would look at places with some awful public schools, like chronically failing dropout factories, places where 50% of the kids dropped out every single year, places with academic proficiencies, in the single digits, where what percentage are proficient in math or English, that kind of thing. So it started there, but then it started to evolve where people would start specialty charter schools for the performing arts, or for a charter school for science and math focus, or a charter school just for vocational skills, or a charter school just for autistic kids. And some of this specialization started to appeal to people who maybe didn't live in an area with awful regular public schools, but maybe they just wanted a different choice. So Princeton, New Jersey, for example, right now, a wealthy district with a famous university called Princeton University, has a charter school. Why? Because of some of this dynamic I'm talking about, the competition where they can innovate and do things that traditional public schools can't.
So we have a comment on Facebook. It says we need better ways for young people to learn about the world of work after high school, like apprenticeships or community service with a stipend. How do charter schools play a role in that?
First of all, there's a film we did called The Ticket, which actually profiled a private school that used vouchers, another form of school choice, in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. They did exactly what that person is talking about. The high school kids go 4 days a week at school, and 1 day a week they have jobs in the city of Cleveland.
That's awesome.
It's in hospitals. It can be in a law firm. It can be in all kinds of different jobs.
Building a resume.
They're building a resume. They're building work experience. There's a sense of what it's like to go to work every day and get a paycheck and have a boss, and it train. That's important.
Also, they learn the soft skills.
Exactly right. So all that is happening, and I don't know of any charter schools with that model of kind of a work study model exactly like that. But there may be one tomorrow. Maybe
So tell us about, the power of storytelling. You're a news person by background. You're a journalist. How do you use the power of storytelling to showcase your cause?
Well, so we don't ever do that, actually. No, just kidding.
You did that like 5 minutes ago. That video was a bombshell.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, so for example, we interviewed a girl about a year ago for a different film, and she was talking, a 10th grade girl, and a bunch of students for this film. It was about Catholic schools we were profiling in this one film, and she starts to talk about K through 9 in regular public schools, 10th grade in the Catholic schools. She started talking at the relentless, vicious bullying she got in the traditional public schools. She says those like mean girls who hate you, and every day you've got to walk back into that classroom and there's nothing you can do about it, and there's nothing you can do. And as she's talking, she starts to weep on camera and just has to stop. And she's crying about this just vicious treatment in the traditional public schools she had. And that she called it a new chance at life. She's 15 years old with a new chance at life by going to this. And then later we met her mother, and her mother was deaf. They were signing to each other. And it occurred to me, and maybe this was the reason behind the bullying, I don't know. But the point is that you can tell people stories about individual lives, and it does cut through the the data and the clutter, and a lot of people.
It's real.
It makes it real, and these are real lives. You know, this isn't. A lot of times, public policy issues seem kind of wonky or something, and it's right. But education, everyone can relate to. Everyone was in school. Everyone has memories of both good and bad of things that happened, and so I think storytelling is key. And that's what we do at Choice Media. We have a new smartphone app we just released. If you could just search Choice Media on your smartphone and find it, and of course, website, Twitter feed, Facebook, all the rest.
So are you dedicated to covering a certain part of education policy? Because that's such a broad spectrum.
I know. Like, we're amazed that there's so little cover. Look, in other words, it's ironic you would say that. Because on the one hand, it's such a broad spectrum. There's so much news. You just go to the Choice Media website, you see it every day. And yet, you think about all this other news we get all the time, relentlessly about, politics and crime and sports and the weather, even traffic. Like how much, there's hardly any education reporting in our culture, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. But how do we cover it? We aggregate a lot of other content, and then when we're especially moved, we create our own.
So you have an app, people can visit your website.
Yes.
All these videos, like Betsy DeVos getting booed.
We're
not shying away from those controversial topics, are we?
That's right. We're starting a week in review type report, and that what you just saw was the first episode that just aired last Friday, which is a week in review of education news. And so, yeah, there's a lot of news every week. It's amazing, and if you go to the website, you'll see.
Hopefully people will read it and share it and talk about it.
Now that I'm on this show, it's nothing but that's right. I'm headed up.
Well, you're always welcome to air your content here, Bob. Thank you for joining us as always.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. So anyway, well, that was interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So next up, we have Jean Kristensen, who has a company that assists Manhattan-based minority and women-owned business enterprises. She's joined by Glenford Patterson, a new venture advisor who wears many hats, including mentor, instructor, and entrepreneur. Come on, Glenford, what are you doing over there? Get on the show. So, guys, you're a little bit in the same space, okay? Jean, you work with women and minorities who face barriers when starting a business.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that world for someone who's not very familiar with the barriers people face when starting a business?
Sure. So one of the barriers that people face when starting a business is that they lack the expertise to run the business. So you could be a great accountant, but at the same time, you may not have all of the necessary skills to run the business.
And you work with the city, correct, with a specific program, right?
Yes, we are part of the MWBE Community Partnership Program.
That's a long acronym. So that's Women...
Minority and Women Business Enterprise Program that is part of New York City Department of Small Business Services. We are a community partner with the City of New York.
So where are the current goals, and where does the city want to take it in terms of MWBEs?
In terms of there's a 30% goal to increase contract participation by minority and women-owned businesses. So in other words, award 30% of all contracts awarded by the City of New York to
And that's a
minority
huge pot
and
of money.
women-owned
People don't realize that the
Absolutely.
biggest consumer of all goods is the government. So that's very
Correct.
important. And before we forget about you, Mr. Glenford Patterson, you're kind of in the same space. You help people in early to mid-stage tech startups. And you're also an entrepreneur, and you have an adjunct professor as well. You wear a lot of hats over here. I had it here. But,
Yeah, I know.
Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, just trying. So a lot of things I try to do relates the same way in terms of teaching entrepreneurship to people who actually need it and can understand it. So, for example, the students at City College and the Zahn Center, we try to walk them through the process of how they go to starting a company, building a company, scaling a company, and capital raising. Talked about capital raising. And at the same time, I work with the broader community, Harlem, and other communities, and just talk about what we do, same way, what we do. We're having a summit coming up on Thursday. And on Thursday, part of it is to make sure that we give a platform to the community to talk, to discuss, to learn, and share ideas around entrepreneurship and tech.
So there seems to be a lot of money floating around the system because the startup Juicero, if you guys were watching, the fancy juice machine that we figured out if you squeeze it, it has the same effect. They got $120 million in startup funding. So obviously there's a lot of startup capital available. Why aren't women and minority-owned businesses accessing that as well as other people?
I think it's a lack of education about how to access that startup money. There is a pool of, there are people who know very specifically how to go out and raise venture capital. And traditionally, small minority and women-owned businesses, just that's not in our awareness. We're more focused on starting our businesses. We start our businesses for different reasons. And, we raise capital on our own. We borrow money. We try traditional lending sources. I don't think we're really focused on the venture capital.
And that conversation that you would have with a venture capitalist is different than what you would have with a private equity person, which is different than what you would have with a bank. So how do you actually train people to know what they don't know?
That's a great question, and it's a big part of what I think entrepreneurs need to learn is how to manage the financial aspects of their business.
But it's a juggling act, right? They're trying to get their business going. They're usually the only person that's really running it, but then they have to also invest in themselves so that way they can grow. So
it's really hard because when you start a business yourself, you're doing everything, as you say. So part of what I try to teach my clients is, to plan ahead, so that you at least add one more person.
And build your social network.
Exactly.
So that way, iron sharpens iron. So if you build your network, not only could you gain access to new capital, but they can meet great people like the two of you.
So I'm clearly outnumbered. There's 3 business people here. My mother's an entrepreneur herself. But so you guys have a lot more to say about this than I do.
Right.
But we're always interested in human stories. So we know about the problem. We know about trouble accessing capital and having to hustle and do everything yourself. But can you guys share with me stories about, people that you've advised and helped get started and how they've overcome those barriers?
Yeah. To that end, and just to touch on the point you just made around the capital raising. So a part of the summit, what we're doing is to host a basic workshop for what we call an expo, entrepreneur expo. And what we're doing is just having startup from Harlem, just in that expo, and we're bringing VCs and accelerators to come and mentor and talk to them about this process of raising capital. How do you go through it? But to that end, the storytelling, to me, as a professor, it's intriguing because one of the things I see, especially at City College, where most of the students are minority students, first students to actually come to school and start that process, and for them to become entrepreneurs and start doing entrepreneurship, it's kind of really intriguing because at the beginning, at the outset, they're not sure. I'm teaching a class this semester, and it's called a startup class. And what I wanted to do was to invite a lot of the people we had Joan Wilson came to our class, Kaya Bond came to our class, and it was so intriguing for the students because to them it was like, whoa, who are these people? I've never met them. And it was so intriguing for the students to actually participate in a conversation with these people. Fred Wilson is going to be part of our discussion on Thursday, but it was just intriguing to see the students looking up and saying, it's so to be a part of this narrative, to be a part of this conversation, it's what they want because they've never seen it before. They don't have access, as you said. So that personal story for me, there's one student in particular. His name is Mohammed. We call him Moody, but his and the process he went through as an entrepreneur. He's from Egypt. He was born in Egypt. He came here. He's going to school here. He's building his story, and for him, the process he's going through to become an entrepreneur from where he was to where he is now. If you see him now, it's unbelievable what he can do. So you're absolutely right. That growth process for me is what's encouraged me a lot of times to do this.
Right. Hearing those anecdotes also encourages the entrepreneur to ride the valleys.
Of course.
Right? And to persevere.
Ride the valleys. Yeah. Is that the glamorous way of saying like the terrible times?
I should say this. There's this young man in Harlem. I really like him, admire him. His name is John Henry. Give him a shout out on it. But he is one of those persons who have been through the valleys, really hard working, understand what it's like to hustle, to work hard. And every time I hear people just talk about him, it's just like this person really understands the valleys. So to talk about the peak and valleys, this is a true.
Absolutely.
So Jean, can you talk a little bit about women? Because we can't leave that out of the conversation,
absolutely.
of course.
Well, one of the assignments that I have as a community partner with the City of New York is to help people raise their online profiles so that they can become more visible to buyers within the City of New York. So I've been working on this process since February, and every month I have had a success story, We have one woman who is an artist by trade, and you wouldn't think of art necessarily as something that the city buys, because people typically think of the city as buying.
The city buys tons of art, and it's usually controversial how much they pay for it. that's the case in Miami. I don't know about the case here.
Well, here, this woman was able to, you know, because she's an artist by trade, she was able to really pivot. She went to the Department of Corrections, and she created a program where she is not only selling art, but she's empowering people within the Department of Corrections. She created an entire platform for that.
Wow, so sort of a art therapy of sorts?
An art therapy. I have another woman who is a photographer. She reached out to us last week. She was able to update her online profiles, and within a couple of weeks, she got a request from the city to do photography. So there are lots of stories about women who have, you know, successfully navigated the program and are starting to gain access.
Well, how easy or hard is it to become a certified minority women-owned business enterprise?
Okay, that's a great question. So the city has just made the process a lot easier. There are two applications, one for sole practitioners or solo entrepreneurs, and the other is for companies. It's basically a 9-step process where companies provide information to support that they actually own and control their businesses. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not necessarily difficult. It is a process, but the city has invested.
So here in New York, it's easy, but in other places it might be more difficult, and there is a federal certification as well.
Yeah,
correct?
so New York has their own certification, and the city of New York has empowered community-based organizations to assist clients with the process.
Is there a reciprocal relationship between the state and city? So if you're already registered with the state, will the city accept that registration?
There is a partnership with the state, but the state has their own process. So, you know, there was a fast track application with the state, the Port Authority, and other partners.
We have such complex governance here. Glenford, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to give
that's
you the
fine.
last word. You work with the next generation of entrepreneurs. Stuff looking good?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I strongly believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, and we talk about this, that the ecosystem as it relates to minority founders is going to transcend technology. And I think that I studied economics, so I understand how that works. I think most people in the business today will realize that, you know, we're naturally born to look for progress. So it's going to become part of the norm, where a lot of the founders today, the young founders who are using social media to build and to grow, are going to be actually get access to phone a lot easier than today.
And that's what we need to do. We need to change the culture, because if we change the culture, then we can actually grow future entrepreneurs.
Okay, so before we say goodbye, you have your 10 seconds to pitch your Harlem Tech Summit. Go ahead, Glenford.
Yeah, so like I said, Thursday, Harlem Tech Summit starts at 9 a.m. We're kicking off this fabulous thing and finish at 7 with a VC panel. So I think it's just fun for us to come on by, everyone to come on by and just have some fun.
Well, thank you, Glenford, and thank you, Gene, for coming
Thank you.
on the
It was a
show.
pleasure.
We look
Awesome.
forward
Definitely a pleasure.
to talking to you again.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you guys so much for having
So
us.
next up, John, we're going to talk about a topic that I don't really know a lot about. In fact, so I had our content assistant at GenFKD, Alana, write an article about it because I had to research it. So Jesse Grushack, I'm sorry if I messed up your last name, you'll correct me in a second. He's with Consensus, and he's here to talk about blockchain technology. Do you have any idea what that is, John?
Yeah, I have a little background in that.
Okay, so welcome, Jesse. In a hoodie, you're such a techie. So can you give us like the 101 course on blockchain technology?
So blockchain technology is the technology that kind of came to a head with Bitcoin. So digital currency is kind of where this technology came from.
So blockchain equals Bitcoin it's like saying a Netflix-like service, a Bitcoin-like monetary system.
It is where this technology kind of grew from. So we actually build on a platform called Ethereum, and so it basically
which is like Bitcoin.
It's like a similar system, right? So Bitcoin is a really good way to transfer value across the internet, right? It is totally digital. You can send it across the world in 10 minutes, and basically it's like digital cash, but you can't create two of them. So the blockchain kind of secures that system, makes that system completely unhackable and unbreakable, really. So it's this ledger that keeps Bitcoin safe, and we build on a platform called Ethereum. And now Ethereum kind of, instead of just doing value transfer, it does applications too. So now we're talking about basically rewriting the way the internet works. We're talking about kind of, I don't know if you guys watch Silicon Valley and they're talking about this.
Big fan.
So this whole season kind of is really, it's based in what we're doing. It's based in the way the internet should work, right? And I mean, even the last couple of days with the huge hacks that are going on with the NSA stuff, right?
Which supposedly it's North Korea now.
You know, whoever they want to blame it on.
Actually, I saw the ransomware, and at the bottom when they flash the page, you know, when you're on your computer and and you press the wrong thing, and all of a sudden the ransomware pops up, it said we accept Bitcoin.
Yeah, they're taking their bribes in Bitcoin.
Well, it's a really
Blockchain.
good way to really secure to send money, right? So basically, you know, these guys
They
can't.
hacked it, but we want you to send us secure.
Well, we don't know where they're from, right? They're from North Korea, they're from wherever. So we don't necessarily know that where these people are from. They're not going to go pick up a big sack of money. So how do you send money across the internet?
Because if you wire cash, you can trace it,
Absolutely.
right? But
So-
you can't trace block.
You could trace Bitcoin, and there's the community is actually kind of coming together and saying, hey, wait a second, let's kind of stamp these Bitcoins and say these Bitcoins are the ones that are basically, you know, really doing damage to some people and some hospitals and some really bad things. So let's stamp these Bitcoins and let's kind of track them through the system and let's not let them be spent.
So it's almost like marked cash.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Ethereum, is it as volatile as Bitcoin in price? Because Bitcoin, the price goes up and down and all around, and someone who ordered a pizza 5 years ago would now have $17 million. Like, how can we trust this currency?
So the currency, you know, it's not necessarily about the currency, right? It's about the technology behind the currency, which is blockchain, and in this case, the Ethereum blockchain. So, you know, it's like if we wanted to run an application on the internet, right? We have to trust Facebook, we have to trust Google, we have to trust Microsoft, right? Any of these large companies that hold our data, that secure our information, we're trusting them with our lives, really, right? You know, your smartphone knows more about you than you probably do. And I mean, it's a scary thought.
That's too smart.
So what besides money can we send around? Information, applications, like what are we talking about?
Right. So we're talking about so in applications, for example, I personally work on a project called Ujo Music, and that project.
I didn't know how to pronounce it. That's the only reason why I didn't mention it. So I already probably butchered your last name. I didn't want to butcher your company name as well.
It's okay. So we're talking about basically a new way to kind of deal with music, right? To deal with data, to deal with the payments behind data, to deal with securing that information and sending it around. So instant licensing, instant payments, having applications that run peer-to-peer, right? So you can connect directly with artists instead of having to go through all these giant labels, all these giant companies, right? So blockchains are really good at removing middlemen from systems. So it's really creating these peer-to-peer networks that is kind of where the internet was born, right? This information sharing that through people and through each other.
And it's a lot more secure than any conventional way.
I mean, you know, it's right now with Bitcoin and with Ethereum, these are, if you were able to get into them, you would be able to get access to billions of dollars because they secure. I mean, the Bitcoin network's worth about $25 billion. The Ethereum network's worth about $8 billion. So, you know, it's a great hacking problem, and if people have tried and constantly over and over again, and they can't break it. So these systems are incredibly secure because then the computers are distributed, right? So even if you take down one computer, there's 6, 8, 9,000 more running
But
the
would
software.
the Pablo Escobar of today be using blockchain technology? Can't all of this be used for, you know, doom and gloom and whatnot?
You know, can't cash, right? At the end of the day, there's always the opposite side of everything. But we like to look at, you know, what the positive benefits, right? The positive benefits of peer-to-peer technology, the positive benefits of what we can really do to when we start, you know, removing the middlemen and giving people back the power, giving people back information.
When do you think this will be able to scale to
It's
the
getting
average
there.
person?
It's definitely getting there. You know, you can open an account in a few minutes and have Bitcoin on your phone and send that around. You know, you can send that to someone in Australia, and you can do this rather quickly.
I can Venmo them too.
You can, absolutely. But then you're waiting 1 to 2 days for Venmo to go to your bank account, right? And all these different things. So imagine if you could literally just be handed cash. And this is what we're talking about with digital currencies. And that's just the very tip of the iceberg with what this stuff's capable of.
So can you tell me about the Ethereal Summit?
Yeah.
'Cause that's what you're here to talk about. Evidently I RSVP, but I don't know what I got myself into.
Absolutely. So, this Friday, we are bringing together about 500 really interesting people, over 60 speakers, and we're going to be talking about the impact that this technology is going to have. So, way past the money, way past any of the nefarious activities that people like to bring this up. We're going to be talking about really the impact that this is going to have on the world, and bringing together the smartest people so that they're aware of this technology and they can understand and utilize it and think about it, because we're trying to solve some really hard problems. And we need the smartest minds on that.
So where do the banks fit in?
The banks right now, they fit in.
Are they interested?
They're all working on this technology. They don't want to be left behind. So it's be disrupted or disrupt yourself, right? So a lot of them are working now with Ethereum. They're working together, which is weird, right? You have all these big banks kind of coming together and saying, hey, wait a second. If we start sharing information, if we start sharing data, we can make more secure systems, we can make bigger systems, better systems, and really give the value back to people.
Wow. So is there something about techies and hoodies? Can you tell us about that, since we have a minute?
I mean, it's easy, right? I woke up, I'm like, all right, t-shirt, hoodie, jeans.
So can you tell us about the connection between hoodies and blockchain technology? Because evidently somehow your brain gets blockchain that you have to wear a hoodie.
It's comfy.
It's comfy. Tell us a little bit about Ujo Music. Did I pronounce
Ujo.
Ujo. See, that's why I didn't say it.
So Ujo Music, basically our goal is to bring value back to artists, right? Create direct connections between fan and artists.
Using blockchain?
Using blockchain technology. And so basically, there's a lot of value that's extracted by the music industry, and we feel the artists deserve more. We feel the artists deserve to be paid more, and we want to try to make that happen. So we're trying to create a system where that can occur, where you can interact with your artists. You can be the first person to get access to tickets if you really are their biggest fan, and they would know that, right? We're trying to build systems that are fair, and are where everyone can succeed, right? If you put as much value in, you can receive as much.
It sounds
value.
like it has a social responsibility element to it.
Absolutely. Blockchain technology reaches across pretty much every industry. Why are we donating money to charities and we have no idea where that goes, right? Why can't we follow that money to the person that we're actually helping?
Well, thank you, Jesse, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And out with the hoodies and in with the high heels we go.
Thanks, guys.
Of course. So next we're joined by Sarah from Bookster, who, of course, is a friend of and a sponsor of Bold Business, and it's a website for book lovers. And she's accompanied by Nikki Robison, the founder and CEO of Nomi Beauty, a company that uses cutting-edge artificial intelligence in the beauty industry. That's something I've never heard of. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having me. Nikki, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited. I'm a big fan and a lover of Bookster and a big admirer of Sarah, so it's truly my pleasure.
We're all big admirers of Sarah.
How can you not be?
A lot to be admired about.
So I have to justify here why we have you. Normally we have somebody who is an author on our segment, but today we are doing someone who has a business that's geared toward millennial women. I thought Bold Business, Nomi Beauty, I think it's a perfect match. So just wanted to say that so you guys
a little asterisk, but artificial intelligence and beauty,
yes,
artificial intelligence is glamorous. This is the first I hear of this.
Artificial intelligence is very glamorous. I say anything that's exciting is glamorous. So we have all things exciting at Nomi Beauty. But what happens is actually, so let me backtrack us a little bit, and then I think it'll be easier to fit in where
tell us
artificial
about Nomi
comes
Beauty
in.
a little bit.
So Nomi Beauty actually supplies hair and makeup services. So we're talking blowouts, updos, makeup on demand to women in hotels. Right? So when you're traveling, we always say that we know you can't put your suitcase, we know you can't put your hairstyles in your suitcase, right? TWA would never let you, okay? And those plane tickets get costly. So I know she was there for you when you had your prom, when you got married, but when Sue can't be there for you, Nomi is, and we're your trusted beauty companion on the road. So actually only 1% of hotels have salons, but you can bring Nomi Beauty into almost all the hotels in New York, and many of them are partnered with us. And when they're partnered with us. You can charge the room, which is great for women. It makes everything so much easier. And then most of them will actually give a woman a complimentary service, just like you get a free breakfast or get a free Wi-Fi. So it's super exciting to watch the hotel industry to become disrupted by us. And it's really amazing to watch industries value their female guests. So we think of our partners as people and as organizations that are really saying, you know what? This woman's on the road, she's a consultant, and I'm gonna give her the greatest gift of luxury as a compliment to her room by, she can get room service, she can get her hair done for free, she can finish her presentation, or when mom's on the road with 3 kids under 7, she's getting the best updo at her niece's wedding and she looks so on point. So that's what Nomi does, but how do we bring the technology piece into it? So my background's beauty. My co-founder, who's not with us today, his name is Jeremy Linder. He's back at the office. He's our CTO and a fabulous man. So we created a platform that sits on top of Oracle and stands alone. So Oracle supplies most of the technology into hotels.
The biggest company that no one's ever heard of.
But you should know of it. Everyone should know about Oracle. I feel like they've really done some amazing stuff.
Yep. And what we do is we actually take artificial intelligence and we use that to make scheduling decisions, to make sure that you are getting the best possible artist for you. So somebody who's going to do an amazing job in your hair.
That's important.
And that someone can be on time as well. So we sit on Oracle, we ping into Google traffic patterns, and we make something that is normally very complicated look very seamless. And by we, I mean Jeremy.
Yeah. I have a question for you because we have a lot of millennial women out there, and I'm curious, how did you get started being an entrepreneur? And what were some of the pitfalls that you experienced along the way that maybe you could help anyone else out there who's interested in starting their own thing overcome? What advice do you have for that?
Sure. So I got started, true story. My friend Jen, who I love and adore, she was getting married in Boston. And I live in New York. So she said to me, can you come and do my makeup? And I said, sure, Jen, because I started as a makeup artist. Absolutely, I'm there. So here I am on my little train, right? This is before the days of Acela, with my suitcase full of makeup and my dress on my hand. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. I get there. She has 14 women between mom, stepmom, mother-in-law, bridesmaids. The makeup artist didn't show up. There was no salon on premises at the hotel. It's a big misconception. Most hotels have spas, not salons. And there I am, and I'm like, okay, let's go to work, right? So this was before the days of Instagram. So of course I had already previously stalked the boy I wanted to talk to at the cocktail hour on Facebook. So I was like, game on. But instead of getting dressed to try to impress this boy, who, by the way, I didn't get to speak to the whole party because I was late to the cocktail hour and looked like a mess because I had to do all 14 women. And at that point, I was like, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way to do this. And as time went on, I never really forgot about that memory, and I ended up in corporate America at LVMH and Lauder doing brand development and product development, always a makeup artist. And one day I said, there's just got to be a better way. And I remembered that I was at LVMH at that point. All the French women every morning looked amazing on the road.
You got to tell people what LVMH is. That's the most fantastic brand on earth. They own everything that's good, people.
Bookstore and Nomi are the most fantastic and bold.
Louis Vuitton, Moet,
Hennessy. So I worked in marketing over there.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I worked in marketing at LVMH before I had Nomi. And I swear when we would travel, the French women would roll out of bed looking perfect. I would wake up and I would say, I need more help. And I remember that day back to the wedding, and I was like, I got to be able to make this better. And then it became it became the passion, and Nomi was born.
And now you guys have won all kinds of awards.
Yes. So we've won Microsoft Startup of the Year at Angel Week last year, and I was the first woman to ever do that. So that was really exciting. It's been an amazing journey. So I think to kind of say, how do you start a business? First, in my case, I didn't realize what I was in for.
I think that would
Luckily,
be all of us
it worked out well. But be prepared for the unexpected. So I think the first, I realize we're running out of time a little bit. I noticed that. So I want to be able to give you guys some insight that's very helpful. And I would say, the first thing is you need to have an idea and you need to make sure that the market is viable for that idea. And there are all different paths to financing as tech companies, and we read the papers, we always hear about VC funding and that. VC funding, let's not forget, is a very small part of the funding picture. And there are friends and families, there's bank loans, there's lines of credit. So that's the next part. There's also bootstrapping, meaning you save money, you start small, and you go from there. I think after you have your idea and your financing in order, the next thing you really need is a team. You're only as good as your weakest link. I have a fantastic co-founder. Our company now is over 30 people, but we have 2 founding members, Jessica and Ben, who are also the backbone of our organization. And then once you have that as an entrepreneur, 90% of the time take the feedback, only 10% of the time use your gut, because everybody around you is trying to help you. And everybody around you is becoming closer to the ball than you are, and that's why they're there. So it kind of goes back to point 3, which is trust your team, put in a great team, listen to what they're sharing with you, take that feedback, and you'll build the dream together.
Nikki, we have a question actually, and this is actually one of my questions too. So, your business,
Sure.
the stylist or the makeup artist comes. What type of services do they offer?
Sure.
So is it just the stylist visit or products? Was the question offline?
Sure. So we offer blowouts, so getting your hair blown out. We offer updos, so styling for a formal occasion. And then we offer getting your makeup done and makeup lessons. Actually, it's a great question, and it's a question we get from our customers all the time. And we are actually launching on-demand retailing next year. So you'll be able to buy those products in the hotel and then find them additionally online with us as well. And we are not just going to be selling our own brand, we're actually going to be selling lots of brands.
I love that.
Sarah, do you have any further questions before we move on to our last guest?
I came with some questions, so I'm just gonna consult my little handy dandy notebook. All right, what do you enjoy most about your job or being an entrepreneur, as opposed to being in marketing somewhere or going and working for a more corporate company?
So, what I love most about being an entrepreneur is actually being able to create something. So, it starts with ideas, and those ideas become executional. And I tell people all the time, I think anyone who's an innovator has great ideas, but ideas are cheap. They have to be executed, and execution is king. You could have the best product in the world. If you don't have great operations, you don't have marketing, it doesn't matter. So I think that what I love the most is watching us go from birth to something real, and then I meet my customers and they use it and they feel good, and when you look good, you feel good, and I hear their stories, and I get their letters, and they write to us, in this case they email us really, and tell us how they slayed their presentation and they felt so confident and they looked beautiful at their wedding, and I really truly enjoy that. The other part I love so much as a CEO is building a culture. And I'm very proud.
That's a hard one.
Yes, it's very hard, and I have a great team that helps me with that. And it's something we're all passionate about, and we push each other and encourage each other to be the best that we can be. And we're all working on different things. So I think having that supportive culture and creating an environment where people go to work and they feel supported is so important.
Well, this has been so lovely, but we are unfortunately out of time. But thank you so much for
my
having
pleasure.
to share.
Thank you
And
for
Sarah,
having
we'll
me.
see you next week, of course.
I'll see you guys
Absolutely.
next week.
So last up, but certainly not least, we have Jess Jacobs. She wears many hats as well as most of our guests do. She's an actress, speaker, advocate for women's rights, and co-founder of Uprise Media. She's currently collaborating with Population Services International and the Maverick Collective in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop advocacy tools that will increase access to safe and legal reproductive care for women internationally. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being patient. You're our last guest.
Oh, happily. It was so fun to watch everybody else's interviews. So very inspiring.
Absolutely, and you get all the scuttlebutt in the green room,
That's
don't
right.
you?
That's so right.
So tell us about the work that you do.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll start with Uprise Media, which is a nascent media production company. We work in film, TV, and digital content. I co-founded that with Audrey Rosenberg, who's been an independent producer in the industry for a while. Both of us perceived a real space for content which is more, I guess you could say, like accurate or authentic to the experiences of the people that they represent. So I think we see a lot of stereotypes in media. We see a lot of underrepresented communities. And we saw a space where there could be stories that were told with more authenticity and more collaboration with those communities.
And And legal reproductive care. That's a hot button
and
issue.
legal reproductive care. So there's that too.
So I tend to be very reticent about this issue because if you haven't noticed, I am a man.
Yes. Well, good. I'll have some space then to speak out.
So I'm going to hand over the keys to you so you can tell us about this.
Is this thing on?
Yes.
So okay. So here we are. It's 2017. We're still fighting for access to contraception. We're still fighting for access to safe and legal abortion care for women who need that as an option. And it's sort of absurd. We're like one of the only developed countries in the nation that doesn't have health care that is sort of universal and doesn't have access to these types of care. And I think that the thing that that I personally really think is important here is that there's an economic imperative to women having access to this kind of care. Countries which give women contraceptives, which educate, properly about sex and reproductive issues. Those are countries which have economic successes because their women are able to enter the workforce at the time that they want to. They're able to grow their careers, grow their businesses. They're able to be in leadership the way that Audrey and I are. Audrey and I have choices about, we've been able to do that because we live in New York.
And obviously, you're working with someone who has received the backing of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yes, that's right. So it is. Bill and Melinda are huge advocates for women's rights and reproductive care, and they're incredible people. PSI is an organization out of DC, which works in healthcare around the world. They operate in 69 countries. I'm focusing actually right now in Côte d'Ivoire with them. So we're developing a pilot program to give women, adolescent girls, so 15 to 24, access to contraception, access to education, referrals to youth-friendly clinics, and then also a space to think about their lives and how their sexual and reproductive health fits into that, as opposed to having it as something separate from their sort of daily experiences.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And you're an actress as
and
well.
I'm an actress.
I can't act. This is the extent of my acting. Here I am.
You're doing a job.
I can only play myself. So tell us, who have you played on screen?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so my most recent role was a drug addict, actually. So it's a
very
film.
glamorous drug addict.
Very glamorous drug. I wasn't. I mean, when you see the movie, I got down to 128 pounds. I dyed. My hair was black, like not looking so cute. But it was an incredible experience. It's called Butterfly Caught. It'll be out soon. But it was an amazing experience, actually, really, to get to investigate that character. I went to a lot of different rehab centers and met with different people to talk about what.
You studied the role.
I did. Because again, like this is, how did I study? Well, so I talked to people, right? Like I was like, what's the experience? Like, how do you get into it? What are you dealing with? And in this film, the character is dealing with rejection and her inability to really cope with that. And so she turns to something that makes her feel good because she's not getting what she needs in other spaces. And I wanted to know what that was like. And again, it gets back to authenticity. I didn't want to create a caricature of somebody who has an addiction problem.
Has it changed your view on addiction playing that role?
Of course. They're human beings. It's a human disease. It's something that I think we stigmatize. I know that we stigmatize in this country. And it's really sensitive. There's a lot of different factors at play, and there are certain. I think that the reactivity was something that I didn't consider. How one tiny thing can start a chain of events for somebody who's really on the edge in those circumstances.
So you're an advocate. You call yourself an advocate. Besides women's issues, what do you feel is important public policy we should be talking about?
Oh my God, I think that the immigration ban is an atrocity. I think, and actually, so.
Look, we try to keep it apolitical.
Yeah,
so about, economic empowerment, all that stuff.
No, that's good. I mean, I think that I would like to speak to the Muslim issue. I think just because I think it's media related. I think that there's a way in which Muslim people are represented in the media, and those are not the characters that we get to identify with. They serve the story of another person. And so I think that if we can tell stories in which we as, I'll speak for myself as a white woman. If I as a white woman can see myself in a Muslim woman because we're both human and we're both women, I think that it's going to change the conversation.
I guess everything ties together, right? Because
the world is
your
all
main
tied
mission is
together,
to liberate women.
Mm-hmm. That is right. To liberate women from different sort of shackles, which are either historical or self-imposed based on expectations that we perceive socio-politically. I think that you brought up economic empowerment, right? I think that women in leadership is a really important thing to have. If we have women speaking at the same degree that we have men speaking currently, we'll see a lot more equality in the way that different sort of things are happening in our country.
Help manage that void that you talked about before. That
Absolutely.
So many people face.
Absolutely. Yeah, opportunities. I think that we can grow opportunities.
Well, Jess, we're unfortunately out of time, but it was so nice having you.
It was really lovely to have you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
And it was so nice having all of you. That concludes this week's edition of Bold Business. Of course, you can catch Clay Aiken and Carrie Sheffield on Friday at 10 a.m. And of course, I'll be back next week at 10 a.m. with someone from Black Enterprise. I don't know, maybe John. See you then.